Great. Well, thank you for taking the time to chat today. I was keen to just go over this epic because we're getting close to needing to start it now, and I wanted to make sure that we know what needs to be done and we have a rough idea of the rather large tickets in there, how we're going to break those down into manageable pieces. And I just wanted to check that there's nothing missing, if that makes sense. So I thought that we could just go through the epic, start at the top and work our way down. So do you have the epic open?
I have it open.
Okay.
I can also share my screen if that's helpful, but I think everybody has probably the...
Yeah, I think it should be okay. So I had dragged these into an order before the meeting, but I see that the order that they were in is not being respected. I think okay, that's fine. So the first one that I wanted to talk about was there was a refactoring. It sounds like it's a bit of a refactoring task, which is dry up, check some code a bit. And it does seem like it's a low risk thing in just extracting shared code, but I was wondering if there's anything that's potentially interesting in here or anything that we should be concerned about. Gabriel, I think this is a question for you.
Just hold on a little bit. I'm trying to open it again. I think I just closed the epic here. Okay. Yeah. Can you ask the question again?
I think you're muted, Rachel.
Sorry, I'm muted. There's one called dry up, check some code a bit.
Dry up, check some code a bit. Let's see.
Yeah, so it looks like it's just extracting some common code. Just wanted to check that this isn't that there's nothing exciting hiding in there.
Yeah, I think this is just a technical debt. There's nothing really exciting about this.
Should I just make a note for Mike to assign a weight to this, because then he can assess it, and then this is good to go.
Well, Gabriel, do you by any chance have an idea of what weight this might be?
Yeah, I just added. It's one.
Okay, I'll refresh the screen.
It was so easy all the time, huh? So.
And the answer was 1. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
So then that must be quite clear what needs to happen. In terms of the testing for that I assume that there are existing tests that will just need to get refactored.
I think we don't need extra tests. It's basically refactoring code. So existing tests should be enough.
Okay. So moving on to the next one. This is a larger one called automatic verification of LFS objects, which is weighted at 11. So
LFS objects, okay.
Yeah. So in the description, it does say wait for attachment verification to be completed, and then automatically verify LFS objects. But it feels like we should break this down further because that sounds quite large for those 2 statements.
And it also declares a dependency. It says like the former issue was modified over time to only cover the front end. Now, like this, I interpret as this issue depends on automatically verify uploads on secondaries, which I don't personally understand why, but it's just me. But that's another issue that is weighted at 5.
Okay, I can explain why maybe they are related. Everything that is stored on the file system, when it's like something that is submitted by the user, and in this case, LFS objects share most of the code that is used, for example, when you attach an image to a merge request or to an issue.
Mm-hmm.
The underlying code is basically the same. So when you fix the first, which is the uploads, when you make the verification code for the uploads, you can adapt it for the LFS objects because it's mostly using the same code base.
Okay.
So in that sense, we need to first do the verification for the uploads and keep it in mind that it will be used by the LFS objects as well. So it can be simpler.
Okay, so this one at the moment about automatically verifying uploads is part of an Epic improved support for uploads. So if this is a dependency for verifying all data, should we move this one across or leave it in the uploads project?
I don't mind, but if it is a dependency, it needs to get done, right? If it is like part of this improve uploads, that's fine. I think we should just make a note here that this is important. I can make a note in this. This needs to be done as part of finishing the verify all replication epic.
And just to explain what is the automatic part here, I believe it's Chrome task. We have Sidekick Chrome. Mm-hmm. So it's something that kicks in every X amount of time and does redo the verification. So.
Okay. But actually, like if I dig a little bit deeper here, so the automatically verify uploads on secondaries, which is an improve uploads, depends on another thing. It's which is constantly verify uploads on GeoPrimary, which is again in verify data, like in that epic. So I almost feel like here we need to choose a little bit, right? As in, you know, if the first part is part of verify already, or like verify replicated data, and then the next part isn't, that doesn't make sense to me. So I would be inclined to move this over into the verification epic.
Well, I think since the verification epic is the one that's active, then we should move it over and leave the rest of the upload stuff in the upload project. Yeah.
Yes, let me quickly do this because I think that is...
So with a piece of work that's to constantly verify uploads, is it actually true that it's constantly verify all other types of data as well? Like it's like this ticket is specific to uploads, but we actually need this to be general for other types of data too.
Yeah, for our repositories, we already do that. But the thing is, repository is a different thing. Mm. It's entirely different from uploads. And I think uploads holds all other types of uploads, including LFS. So this is likely a specialization of how the upload verification works, but it's mostly the same code. That's if we're going to weight both, I would say, for example, doing that for uploads it's a 10, and doing this for LFS it's a 1. So it's just
okay.
You just need to change a few things and it will work.
Okay. So it sounds like so we've moved over automatically verifying the uploads on secondaries. We need to do that. No, we need to constantly verify the uploads on the primary. Then we need to automatically verify uploads on secondaries. And once we've done that, we can then do the automatic verification of LFS objects.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So coming back to constantly verify uploads on the GeoPrimary, that's currently an 8 as well. So I think we also need to just be more specific about what's included in there. So what type of, what tasks need to be done here to get this done?
Which
constantly verify uploads. Would it be helpful if I share my screen?
Yeah, I think it makes sense because then otherwise we look at different things.
Yeah, let me share my screen. Great. Can you see my Firefox window?
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so for this one, because it's an 8, I think we at least need some sort of bullet pointed list around what makes up the 8.
primary.
I mean,
okay, go ahead.
No, please.
So basically, all of the bullet points, they share some sort of complexity. We have to deal with both local and object storage that adds up. So we need to basically build an interface and switch from one to the other. Local file it's easier, but object storage sometimes it's hard. Hard because you need to build specific types of tests. The checksum on object storage will need to be slightly different as we need to think a little bit more about memory and how we will not blow up the server by like putting everything in memory and then doing the checksum.
Okay.
So this is one complication factor.
Okay.
We will need to probably improve the model to hold this type of mismatches and like hold all the metadata from the verification. It will probably be similar to the project one, but again, we have to double check that. Yeah, there is like some level of complexity there.
Okay.
And, I don't know if this is done in this issue or on the secondary one, but at some point we'll have to merge the queries between what is on the secondary and what's on the primary and verify what's missing or what's mismatching, etc. So
I think that one, yeah, because this one is about including non-geo instances. So this one is about verifying that files exist, files have changed, the model has stopped existing. So yeah, it sounds like that last statement there can be moved over to the one about the secondaries. So handling local files and handling the object storage case. So given your experience now with working with the object storage work that you've been doing lately, do you think that this is still an 8, knowing what you know now about the complexities of object storage?
I would probably increase that number. Just because there are knows and knows.
Okay. There are known unknowns or unknown unknowns?
Known unknowns. Yeah, we know that there are things that we don't know.
Okay, okay. There are known unknowns about working with object storage, which...
But can we make 2 separate issues? One that basically just goes about handling local files first, and then doing the same for object storage, or does it make more sense to have them in one issue?
Well, I think having them on one issue makes sense, but maybe having them in 2 merge requests would make sense.
Yeah.
Sure. I think if we do it in 2 issues, it's the type of thing where I think it should go together. Like it should make it... I mean, I know it's not an all or nothing thing to do it like that, but I feel like it would be better to release support for both of them than to be specific for local files and then do the object storage separately.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is again the case where you have to build an interface that switches from one to the other. And also that there is the possibility that some of your data is local and some of your data is on object storage. This will be the case when you have an installation that is started with local files, then turn it on object storage, run with object storage for a while, and then they decide that they need to migrate what is left as local files. So this is something that I think even GitLab did for a while. So there's this hybrid situation as well.
Okay. So if it's increased to 11, is there anything more specific that needs to be said about the handling object storage?
Let's see. There's probably some optimizations opportunity with object storage, but I don't think this is a fit for this issue.
Yeah, I think keeping any optimizations for that should be out of scope for this. I think this is about delivering the functionality, and then the optimization stuff we can do as like a something that happens quite quickly after.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Okay, so my understanding is, and I mean, this is how this is currently laid out. This needs to be done first, right? And only then can we look at automatically verify uploads on secondaries, which is the next one.
Yeah.
Which is another 5. And only after that, we can look at LFS objects, which is another 11. And after that, we can look at automatic verification of job artifacts, which is another 10. So if that is true, that means until we actually get those things implemented, you know, let's say the time span here is definitely around 2 months. Right?
Yeah.
And so my question is, if that is really true, is there like a way we can actually parallelize some of this at all? Because otherwise it's very sequential, right? And like, I don't know if that's just a technical requirement.
Maybe there's something that we can split on this one. I'm thinking about this right now. When we did the verification with projects, with repositories, what we did initially was making the verification step manually triggered. So you remove some of the complexity of doing this with a cron job or something that it's being triggered after a certain event. So this can probably be split that way. So just build the verification code as one issue and do that triggered by, for example, pushing something to the system or after something is added, or so that there's less things that you have to do. For example, you don't need to do that when processing a certain event. This reduces the complexity and the scope of the issue.
So are you talking about in terms of this one, constantly verify uploads? That if we just did the verify uploads part and then you add in the word constantly as a separate thing, it would be less. It would be less. So, so if we did the work that was, if we verified uploads on the primary, so take the word constantly out, and then we verified uploads on the secondary, and then we verified LFS objects, you can then add in the automatic part as one issue later on.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. To
make the automatic thing apply to all of the issues that need it, rather than trying to build the automaticness in at the start.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Is that also true for job artifacts? Because that has the automatic word as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so then it sounds like what we need to do is change all of these issues to be about just do the verification. And then we create one issue that comes afterwards that says, for every verification that is done manually, do it automatically.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's also something that I don't know in which issue we should tackle this. For the repository verification, we added something to the UI. We should probably do the same here. And that is also a separate issue because it needs UX and front-end work. But that can be done in parallel.
So what exactly would need to be done there? Is that just adding the thing to the screen to make it manual, to have like a button to press?
It's more than that. Do you have any Geo instance open there? Or I can share my screen here.
I'd have to look. Let me see if this one's up. Do you remember this by any chance?
Nope.
No, but I have one open if you.
Okay, so I'll stop my share so someone else can start.
Please go to the secondary.
Yeah. I've become very proficient at quickly spinning up a geo thing with this Ansible bit. has helped quite a lot. 1 second. Now I just need to find my Zoom. Okay. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so if you go to the admin area and Geo, yeah, you have, for example, projects there. Oh, we already have uploads. This is.
So it doesn't really show anything because I have nothing, but it has the.
Okay, let me double check here. We are already doing something for uploads.
But this is interesting because we can't keep adding menu items for all of the different data types that we have.
No, we should probably have a separate screen where you can look at projects and at uploads or at whatever you're interested in, but not like have another like menu item for everything.
But that makes me start to think that that needs to be part of this epic as well, is that if we're going to be verifying information, if we're going to be if we are going to be verifying different types of data and displaying that information on the screen, we need to figure out exactly where we're going to show that, because adding more drop downs, adding more menu items here isn't, I don't think, the right thing to do.
No.
There is one thing that we need to consider is most of those information are here as a way to troubleshoot. So when you have data that is missing, it's useful for you to be able to drill down and see exactly what is missing. So we need some level of granularity. But maybe projects uploads LFS, maybe they are, that there's nothing other than just, pages and registry.
But I think what I can do is, because I would say maybe we won't finish this. Like, I think actually having a visual part of this is great, but it doesn't prevent us from doing all of the implementation work in the backend first, right?
Sure, yeah.
So I think what is a follow-up for me here is I can talk to Jackie and say, like, look, we're starting all of this work on like verification, but currently how we surface this is not ideal in the like Geo interface. Can we discuss some UI and UX work here, to actually improve this? But that can be, the next step.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but based on what we have already, to add verification to uploads, we can do very similar to how we did for projects. We have the sync, and then we do the verification extra bits to the screen, and we can just reuse the same UI right now.
I mean, the UI to me looks like a copy paste, from nodes to uploads, or from projects to uploads. Which is not pretty, but you could argue that if that actually gets 90% of the job done with minimal effort, then maybe that's a good initial step. But I think there is something to be said for cleaning this up a little bit.
Yeah, by looking at the screen, there's a few things that we should probably add to this epic. And it's probably things that is triggered by the UI. So there's like this issue that we will improve the UI, and is adding the batch operations that we can trigger resync and recheck. Probably some extra filtering here as well. But yeah.
So the issue that I'm just trying to capture notes on the epic as we go.
Yeah.
So the thing that has to be added is buttons on the UI to be able to initiate the jobs.
Yeah. So for the manually triggered jobs, we have to have buttons there that triggers the verification and probably resync as well. For uploads, there is one extra thing that we need to do. If you let me share my screen here. So I have data. I think it's easier to see. Firefox. Yeah. Okay. Can you all see?
Yeah.
Okay. So for projects, we have the recheck and resync, and we have these batch operations here. So whenever you click, for example, recheck, it will disappear, it will schedule, and you will see it on the pending. The batch operations does the same thing, but for everything. And if we go to uploads, there is one extra action, which is remove. If I understood this, it is something that existed on the primary but was deleted. For example, when you delete a project, then all linked attachments to that project are deleted from disk as well, but they still exist on secondary.
Why don't they just get deleted on the secondary?
I think this was either a bug or a feature. So you could interpret this as a bug, as we are not reflecting the operation, but it's a feature in the sense that you can still recover data.
Okay, I think that's interesting, but I think that that's probably outside of the scope of this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So coming back to just trying to bring this back up a level. So we need buttons on the UI to manually instantiate the jobs. I think handling this state about removing things that isn't there, we should probably have an issue for that, but I don't think we need to address that right now.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll just make a note about that removing.
Yeah.
Okay, I've added that note there. So, okay, so coming back to the plan at the moment, we decided that what we're going to do is we're going to change the issues to be about manually doing these pieces of work and adding buttons to the screen to be able to trigger those things manually, and then automatically performing whatever it is that we're needing to do. But the automaticness can be added in one issue. So if we go back to the list of tasks that we were looking at, we had talked about verifying uploads on the primary. we were now talking about verifying uploads on the secondary. And I think that there were some notes that we were still talking about what needs to be done there. The one piece you said was merge queries between the secondary and the primary and verify what is missing or not matching. So if we look at automatically, I'll share my screen again. And push share. So if we look at automatically verifying uploads on the secondaries, this is currently weighted as a 5. So what other things do we need to keep in mind here because it's a 5?
If we are not doing the UI work at this issue, then it's still 5. If we are doing the UI work, I think it's probably a little bit bigger.
So when you say the UI work, do you mean adding the buttons?
Yeah, adding all the missing information to the upload screen. So adding the extra columns, the buttons, tests for that as well.
Is this something that we could do ourselves, or is this something that we could spin out and actually create a front-end item for?
I think we can do ourselves because there is already a code that does that.
Okay.
But it's just, it requires extra time. So.
Okay, so a thing that is missing here is we're going to need a mock-up about what the screen changes are. Okay. Okay. So then after automatically verifying the uploads on secondaries, we would then take a look at the verification of LFS objects.
Mm-hmm. And is this now a little bit smaller because we're not doing the automatic part?
Yeah, so I think that the automatic part will get taken off and done separately. Mm-hmm. So it's at least a little bit smaller.
Yeah. We need to decide if the LFS part will be merged into the projects or it will have its own view. And
I think LFS objects are usually a part of a project, correct?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure we need to like separate that out even more. I mean, we can think about it.
Yeah, I actually have no idea how to represent the objects itself on the screen. Because they are essentially files, they're essentially blobs, mm-hmm. but they are linked to a single project. Maybe we need some master detail type of vision where you can go to a project and only see uploads LFS objects related to it, or have all of them as random files as we have for uploads.
Well, I think this is where getting in touch with UX and asking for help there is important, because there are going to be a number of different types of objects that we're adding to these screens now. And I think thinking about this from a step, like a holistic viewpoint, is going to be much better, because, I mean, in my mind, changing the project screen to have all of the information about the contents of a project would be better. But I think that having UX help us figure that out would be good. So I think, as Fabian said, we can do the work to do this in the background and adding the UI portion of it on later. So for this, if we also consider, so I'm just going to write on here, consider the UI changes separately.
I think that makes more sense to me, especially because they are a little bit decoupled from each other. And we could, you know, I mean, ideally they get done more or less at the same time, you know, but I think having having a little bit of feedback from Jackie and saying, like, look, this is the challenge we're facing, you know, this is what we're going to do. How should we represent it? I think that's I guess something that they're quite interested in contributing to as well.
Yeah. So if we just think about the work that it takes to verify these objects, what else do we need to think about? Like, is it still an 11 then?
I don't think it's 11 then, because we are probably reusing most of the code from uploads. Let me just get to the issue again. Yes. I'll probably go with 5.
Okay, I'm going to change that to a 5 there. Okay. So then we've done that, the next one is to then do job artifacts, which is also currently listed as a 10, but then does the same apply that this drops down to a 5? And we do the screen changes and the automaticness of it separately.
I mean, this is fine, right? It's like I anticipated that we won't be able to knock out everything here in 12.2. And it actually helps me communicate this a little bit better, because I can say in 12.2, we are currently doing all of the like backend work, you know, to actually like make verification work really well. And then for my next kickoff call, I can say, as a continuation of this, you know, for 12.3, we are going to like automate large proportions of this, and we're going to work with UX to actually ensure that that information is surfaced to users in an acceptable way in that interface, right? That feels like a good like iteration forward.
So in terms of parallelization of this work, because everything is sort of based on the previous thing that's gone before it, it sounds a little bit like this isn't really parallelizable.
The UI work is can be done in parallel.
Yeah, it sounds like the UI work and making anything automatic can be done in parallel, but actually verifying uploads has to be done before we can then verify LFS objects, which has to be done before we can do the job artifacts. It sounds like that's all in a straight line.
Yeah.
So the other set of things that looks like it could potentially be separate is there's one issue here: verification worker should check health of shard. Am I right in thinking that that is quite separate?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. So this is only a 2 as well, so I don't think we need to break this down any further, but do you still agree that this is a 2?
Yeah, I just changed it.
You just agreed with it, okay.
44 minutes ago, exactly.
Okay, so is there anything further on this? Like, because if there's enough information here, I'm going to move this straight to scheduling.
Yeah, this is ready to be done.
So are you fine with me doing that, Fabian?
I object strongly.
Why is my screen over there? So scheduling.
Geo scheduling is the third from the like.
There we go. Okay, so that means that we can now schedule it. Okay, so that's something that can be done separately. And then there is one.
Yeah, there is the check repository. Sorry.
I'm sorry, that one, because it's about, I was going to jump down to this one, disable built-in Sidekick retry for verification workers. But now I'm not sure if that is about the automatedness of this. I'm not actually sure what this is. There's no weight on it yet.
Built-in Sidekick retry for verification workers. So this, let me just look at it.
Okay. So.
Okay. I think this is more a bug. Let me just understand where this comes from.
It sounds like this is separate. It sounds like this is to do with how the workers are running, which I think is going to land up being different from. I mean, obviously not an expert on the code, so always feel free to correct me. But it sounds like this would be done in some way. This would be done somewhere separately.
Yeah, it can be done.
Okay. What do you think the weight of something like this is?
Let me just look at it. I think 2 is a good number here as well. I can just.
And how do we test this?
So the sidekick jobs, it's they are defined in a way that it's more or less a DSL. So the way that you configure and you build it, it's more or less like a configuration of how the job would be run. And all the configuration parameters can be tested as something like this job has retries disabled or something like that. So it can be tested that way.
Okay, so you think that this is a 2?
Yeah.
Cool. So that could also be scheduled?
Yeah, is any additional work information needed here to be able to work on this?
Yeah, I need to think a little bit about if there are any other implications, but yeah, I can put it on my to-do list. And
okay, I'm going to put it in scheduling anyway, and if you think of anything else, we can always add it.
Okay.
Okay, so the other one, Fabian, you were talking about was the check failures on the primary and secondary nodes. So this is about, we don't have a way to check the verification failures. This is about the UI though. This is about spending time thinking about how the information should be represented. So it sounds like there's a whole UI piece around this. So Fabian, are you going to raise the issue for that, for the UI piece here?
I will. I made a note already. I will actually just reach out to Jackie today and say like, hey, this is, something that will probably hit you, either in ideally in 12.3, maybe a little bit like after that, where, we would like some help, from UX on this.
Okay. So I wonder if there's an easy way to see now of all these things, which ones have been scheduled.
Unfortunately, not in that view.
Epic.
No. So what you can do is you can go to the scheduling board.
So I haven't updated all of my links. So there we go. So if we're on the scheduling board, we will see them all. Okay.
I think they're at the bottom.
Yeah. So in terms of talking about this epic, I think that is a pretty good first meeting about this particular epic. We've got some things that we can already schedule for work. we've got some actions to take away from here in terms of how to update these issues. And we can already start working on some of these things as soon as there's space. So is there anything else that we need to talk about today around this epic?
I mean, from my standpoint, what I will do tomorrow morning is I will update the epic description so that we actually have an outline of the plan, what we're going to do. So that's a little bit more clear, because I try to get into the habit of capturing the latest state in the epic. I think the one question I have is, for example, now if we modify the constantly verify uploads on GeoPrimary, which I think in our sort of dependency tree is the first thing that we can do. Is that actually already ready to be scheduled? Because after updating this information, because that would mean that we can also say yes, this is happening now. We are going to kick off work on it.
Yeah, so I think that if the description is changed to take into account the manual automatic piece, then yeah, I think that we could do this.
Cool.
Another question, this is for Gabriel. This is constantly verify the uploads on the primary. Everything else is about verifying things, just verifying the objects, which I assume is on secondaries. So what makes the upload special that that there's certain things that have to be done on the primary first?
I think all of them have to have this on primary part. The thing is, they are stored in different tables. But uploads in general are almost the same thing. They are almost every one of them are in the same type of table. Let me just recheck this. Upload. We have the uploads table, and there I think it holds different types of uploads. So when you store the checksum there, it does for all sorts of uploads, I think including LFS. Let's see if there's any. We have an LFS table as well. So yeah, we need this primary thing for the LFS as well.
So it seems now for each data type, there needs to be do it on the primary, do it on the secondary.
Yeah.
Add it to the UI, automated. It's like 4 pieces for each type.
Yeah.
Okay. It's almost like each type becomes an epic in its own right, almost, and then the UI. Yeah. Sorry, Fabian, this just got bigger.
I am not surprised.
But that's why I think these conversations are useful, because if we just started it and then suddenly we find out how big it is, then we've made commitments and we've made promises about what we can accomplish. And that's exactly what I mean, I wasn't hoping to find this in the conversation, but that's why I enjoy these conversations.
Yeah. No, it's good to catch them early. I think that I have 2 observations. So, and this may be completely wrong. I've worked a lot on products where you have to integrate lots of different, let's say, data types, right? So you have 15 databases for protein structures, right? And you need to consume all of them, right? And as soon as I mention proteins, Gabriel runs away.
Who's that?
Yeah. No.
Oh, so he has his headphones on, so he can still hear you while he's walking around.
Oh, yeah. So my point is that here we have sort of we just talked about a common flow. You have to add this to the primary. You have to add it to the secondary, and then you have to ideally automate it. And it's sort of the same thing over and over, right? And it will also become so I think we're a little bit in this spot with this epic because we've added lots of things that we sync, but we've not found a way to always make sure that the verification also works, right? So my question is there also, from an engineering standpoint, an opportunity to say, this is sort of our framework, like if you add a data type, right, and we replicate it, this is how you make sure the verification works, so that it's not always an effort of like 5 days each for each thing. But like, I have no idea if that's feasible or if it's really so different.
So there is another issue that I've found. Create geo checklist for how to add new data types. So
Yes.
This was part of the other epic that Douglas is owning, about we want to make it easy to add new data types, and we want it to be easy for other people to be able to add them for us, ideally. But it sounds like we're running into the same thing now, where we've half added a data type, and we're now needing to do the rest of the work to finish adding the data type. Like, we've replicated it, but we haven't finished the verification side of things. So with that in mind, it feels like this also needs to be, if we did this, at least we would also have a way of testing it when we're doing the work ourselves.
Yes.
Because we would know these are all the steps that need to happen. So when we go back to talking about uploads, have we gone through all the steps? When we talk about LFS objects, have we gone through all the steps? Except like repeat for all of the different types. So this one is in scheduling at the moment, and it feels like this needs to be picked up and done as a way of helping us get through the verification of the other types.
Yes.
Would you also agree with that, Gabriel?
Yeah, actually, this whole conversation was very useful for the conversation that we will have
On
tomorrow.
Thursday.
Yeah, on Thursday, yeah. And I think we can have everything in mind. All these different things that also includes verification and UI work, and try to think about how we can reduce the complexity and make it easier to add new data types. Yeah, if we consider the whole replication as the full life cycle from adding to having it stable and usable with all the UI work, then it's this whole thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think this is like, so I am keen on doing it because I think our customers, I think, need to trust us that when we say we are replicating this, we know exactly what we do, and we can also clearly explain what the limitations are. It's like, this is, when we say we are replicating LFS objects, this is exactly what we mean, right? And that also may mean that we're not doing like some other things, right? But I think that should be like very clearly statable, right? Because otherwise people will like, well, like, but what about this? And, like, it's true here, but not true there. And then it becomes really confusing. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to get this really straight, which is fun, I think.
Cool. Well, I'm really sorry that I won't be able to join that meeting on Thursday, but I will watch the recording to see what you guys are able to come up with.
Cool. Yeah, what I'll offer, Gabriel, is like tomorrow morning, I'll also sit down and I'll update the Epic description, and maybe, if you hadn't had the chance because you're traveling, I may update some of the issues as well, but only mildly. And then I think by Friday, Rachel and I will meet for the scheduling so that we can make sure that, the items that need to be worked on first get into the build board, and then we can just push this through. Because my hope is that this style of working also means that ideally a large part of the Geo team can sort of focus their like combined brains, on these issues and say like, hey, this is something we care about right now. Let's solve this problem, right? And let's solve it not in a, like everybody does something different, but really, like, let's go for it and knock it out.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool.
Well, this I have another meeting at the top of the hour. This has been super productive. I will upload the recording. Thank you so much. I think this has been a really good meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks everyone.
Great.
Bye.
Bye.